Welcome to grayprimer, a channel that's mostly about miniatures. My name is Nick, I'm your host, and in this episode I'm going to be showing you how I built my latest Warhammer diorama. This one is set at the very end of the Siege of Terra and is titled Last Days of the Horus Heresy. The images you saw in the opening sequence were all from the Horus Heresy Collected Visions. This was published in 2007 by Games Workshop's Black Library. It is fantastic and freaky, it's wonderful, it's weird. This is hard to find but well worth the search. Mine was given to me very generously by Dwayne from Plasticrack Gaming. Alright, let's go. I bought this Horus Heresy Age of Darkness launch set over a year ago, and it's got everything you need to get started in the Horus Heresy game, including whippy measuring sticks. This kit is still very much available right now, and is one of the best value big boxes from Games Workshop in recent memory. It truly is a mountain of sharply detailed plastic. You get 2 Legion Praetors, 10 Cataphracti Terminators, 1 beautiful Contemptor Dreadnought, and 1 Land Raider Spartan Assault Tank, and 40 Tactical Marines in Mk6 power armor. You also get dice, bases, blast templates, water slide decals, an instruction leaflet, and a simply beautiful book with all the lore and rules you'll need. I just keep going back to this book to look at all the wonderful art, read about the armor types, the legions, their primarchs, and it gives me an endless resource for inspiration. It's also got lots of great photos of nicely painted miniatures. For this diorama, I'll be using one of the 2 Praetors that came in the box, a great looking mini with a cracking sword and no shortage of detail. The Land Raider Spartan Assault Tank will also be brought into service. It has a surprising number of frames to build it out with, but that's no bad thing. And finally, most of the diorama will be covered in dead Space Marines. I'm sure they expected more out of life when they were produced in Nottingham, probably last year, but they are destined to bleed out eternally in my Siege of Terra diorama. Okay, it's time for my beautiful but expensive Tamiya clippers to get clipping. Before that though, I wanted to mention that I used some bits from this 2009 Blood Angels Battle Force, mostly bolters and open hands, but it did prove useful. This son of Horus will be face down in a puddle of blood, and I wanted to show his sword plunged almost to the hilt in the muddy battlefield. So I used this fancy technique to work out how I could do that. And then there's this poor Imperial Fist who will have his gory guts on the floor, and it really hurts to cut these minis in half. To give you an idea of how I battle damage my Marines, this son of Horus is getting impact craters courtesy of a pin vise. I use different diameter bits, and I don't mind if they get scraped up too, all adds to the effect. This poor soul has given an arm and an eye for the War Master's cause. The Spartan tank is an absolute unit of a thing. It's a beautiful angry lump. But even with that, I can't resist modifying it. So here I'm drilling holes so that a front ramp chain can be added. And this is just jewelry chain I bought from Amazon or somewhere. It works well, it's really cheap, and it scales nicely. For this tank, I also wanted some stowage and accessories on the outer hull, so I made a spool of barbed wire with a matchstick and some scaled barbed wire from Green Stuff World. And I also added 1/35 scale stowage bags and tools from Tamiya to the sides and top of the tank to increase the authentic feel of an armoured vehicle in mid-campaign. And onto the back I added some spare road wheels that I think are also 1/35 scale Tamiya bits, but don't ask me which tank they came from originally. My bits box is deep and mysterious, but I think these look pretty cool. Unleashing the rotary tool on tanks is now par for the course with my dioramas, and this one is no different. I try to show both where shells have glanced off the tank's armor and also where they've detonated successfully. I mix up the drill bit sizes to show small arms fire impacts as well as general wear and tear. This is my favorite part of making vehicle dioramas. The base is a 12" by 8" by 1" yoga block, and I use Army Painter XPS foam to layer up my hillside and blast crater. I just think of them as contoured layers on a map, and I cut the edges at a bit of a slope, and then I plan to fill in the gaps between the contoured layers with DAS clay. Army Painter XPS foam is actually easy to work with, and it cuts really well. Here I'm cutting a little groove into my blast crater so the tank can roll neatly into it. Beautiful. Pew! I use a 5,000-year-old bottle of Citadel PVA glue to stick all the layers together, and it's also pretty handy for filling in any gaps that I find. Citadel don't sell as glue anymore, but PVA glue is pretty much all the same, so use what you have lying around. At some point the Citadel stuff will run out and I'll be very slightly sad, or maybe I'll just refill the bottle and keep going forever. And here it is, ready to have some DAS clay and pebbles added, and some grey primer sprayed on. It looks like a moonscape right now, but not for long. I'll coat everything in AK asphalt, and then I'll add visual interest with wet crackle effects, stirred earth, and wet ground. I absolutely love the asphalt texture paint. Vallejo's black lava is amazing too, but I've run out. This looks wet and nasty now, but when it dries it'll look like mottled, charred earth. In 30,000 years, Warhammer thinks all of Earth will look like this. They may be right. Alright, let's make a Puddle of Blood. I mix Vallejo's still water to Citadel's blood for the blood god. Say the words, Dorn. I pour it on, and this gunk has a nice long drying time. So I can use a bit of sprue to flick the blood onto the splash effect that I made with clay, and up the side of the hill also. It's going to dry shiny and it looks completely gross. It's perfect. The base coat for the Sons of Horus will of course be Sons of Horus Green from Citadel, and I really wish they did a contrast version of this. It goes on fine, but the Iyanden yellow contrast goes onto the Imperial Fists so much better. Thanks to the painting phase for this tip for painting yellow, it made the job so much easier. After coating all the metal bits with Citadel's lead belcher, Vallejo's brassy brass is awesome for adding a little metallic contrast to the guns and some armor. Citadel's Nuln Oil is my go-to over the top of lead belcher for adding shade to gunmetal. And it seems to work okay on brass too. But it comes into its own on silvery weaponry. I absolutely love this stuff. Can someone please tell me if lead belcher is the modern equivalent of Citadel's old chainmail paint? It smells just as wonderful and is perfect for showing scratches and battle damage on armor. I use Green Stuff World's Black Suit liquid pigments from their dust set to show carbon deposits on muzzles and around impact craters. And I use their coagulated blood to get very up close and personal with this poor Imperial Fist. This just seems wrong, and I probably should have had some kind of trigger warning for Sons of Dorn fans. But then the Sons of Horus fans would have wanted one too. Maybe I should have had one for this. Definitely this. The guts are milliput, by the way. Ooh, that looks like it would hurt in the morning. Remember that Marine I cut in half? This is how he ended up. I get the black suit out again to show that these Marines have been walking around in ash-coated rubble. I have no idea what happened to my thumb here, but an antibiotic sorted me out. You know, I had a journey getting this tank to where it is here, and maybe in the future I'll tell my harrowing tale. Let's just say I eventually got Imperial Fists Yellow contrast paint to work after stripping it twice following some airbrush incidents. It's as good as it's gonna get, which is the perfect time to make it dirty. And if Nuln Oil is liquid talent, then Streaking Grime is grot in a pot. Slap it on, push it into all the nooks and crannies, especially lower down on the tank, where it'll experience the most environmental trauma. Then use odorless thinner, mineral spirits, white spirits to blend it back and smooth it all out. Enamels are so cool to mess around with when doing weathering effects. And while the Puddle of Blood is still tacky, I settle my newly weathered Spartan into its forever home. I dry brush on some Green Stuff World liquid pigment to add more tone variation to the base, as it was looking a bit flat. This stuff dries super matte and the effect will be subtle and realistic. And now it's time to accessorize my Siege of Terra battlefield with dropped bolt rifles, backpacks, there's an abandoned leg, and of course there are all of the fallen battle brothers of the Sons of Horus and Imperial Fists legions. This one almost took a little extra damage because I'm careless and excited. I took some reference photos early in the project to map out where all of these bits and pieces should go. And these helped me to tell the story of this encounter as per my original concept. The Praetor is the only living infantry marine in this diorama, and he doesn't seem bothered at all. Because don't forget, during the Siege of Terra, scenes like this would be repeated for thousands of kilometers. It's grimdark on an unimaginable scale. And just because I felt it wasn't quite grim enough, I got my gore mix out again and used my toothpick to add a little extra splatter to the scene. And yes, Space Marine blood clots pretty quickly when their bodies are working properly. But I wanted to show at least a little extra gore to let us know that none of these super soldiers are feeling particularly super today. They've actually made a little bit of a mess in the Emperor's front garden. You know, I can't wait to read the final Siege of Terra book in the utterly epic Horus Heresy series. I'm planning another Siege of Terra diorama to coincide with the release of that book later this year. For now though, I hope you enjoyed the video and my diorama, and I'm so grateful that you chose to spend some time with me today. My channel is growing at a bit of a snail's pace, so I'd really appreciate if you could subscribe if you haven't already. But until the next time, take care and bye bye.